Kiran, good evening. It's indeed a pleasure and an honor to be talking to you. I think we're going to have a fascinating 30 odd minutes of a conversation around your journey and how you have sort of created this whole platform, the DFC thinking, and what impact it has had. So thank you so much for attending our conference. As a starting point, Kiran, it would be lovely for our audience to hear about your journey. Just very quickly, I was reading about your background. You got inspired by your sister, and then you went to NID. But from there, you became a social entrepreneur. So, how did that pan out?
I wanted to just correct the data since Vineet was just sharing about scale. We've actually touched 3 million children in 70 countries. So since I don't know what that did, but I think, when I was looking at your video of Plaksha University and seeing that wonderful space, etc. And I was just reminded of NID. When I remember walking into NID, God, this was in 1982, I think. And I remember breathing for the first time. And I say that, and I say why I mentioned that. I think when a student or a learner encounters learning that is deeply personal and that triggers a personal connect, I think you understand what it should feel like and what it should sound like. So I think because of that experience of walking into NIT, my father actually was one of the first machine tool designers of India, first batch of IIT Kharagpur and, gold medal.
Yeah, I read that, yeah.
So I think design was always there. And of course, went to a very traditional school. But I think I was always very lucky to have the space to ask why not and what if, right from my beginning. So I think that was such a natural mindset that Kisne kaha, yeah? Why not? Who said, So I think that natural, freedom to formulate a kind of point of view and then subsequently take responsibility for that. It's not just the random idea of having an opinion. I think that's the lowest form of human contribution. I think if you can assume the responsibility for it, then you start making change. So I had that opportunity. Then I remember going to NID and oh my God, I still remember that first day I walked in and I remember sitting in the lawns with having a cup of chai in a circle, everything that was anti-learning when you come from a traditional school, with a faculty member who didn't seem to think that hierarchy was the reason that they will have a relationship with you. It was not about hierarchy. It was that leaning in. And I remember he leaned in to look at each of us and listen to our story. I cannot tell you how amazing that felt. And I was thinking, shit, man, I got that when I was 17 years old. What a pity, right? And 17 years of my life went through without really understanding what that magic of learning might look like.
And they took you without you finishing your 12th, I heard.
I'm extremely, uneducated. Yes, I remember I was in my 11th and I wanted to be a doctor, by the way. I was unfortunately good in studies, and at that time you either became a doctor or an engineer. So I was thinking, yes, I'm going to become a doctor. And I walked into the interview and I don't know, I just fell in love. I think they took me in thinking that I would be okay. And so I got into the design field and I think that finally shaped everything subsequently from that. So when I became a mom, I keep saying I fell in love with my son and I looked at him and said, Beta, life will know you, that grand, mother and son moment. And so when he went to school, very early, I realized, my God, how schools reward compliance. If you can keep quiet, you are a good student. I mean, that's the pretty downright information we give all our children. Okay, and we garb it under this idea of respect. If you are respectful, you should be quiet and you should listen. I mean, that's the glorious understanding of learning. And so when he was in grade 1 and I put him in at 3 months, I tell you, in 3 months when I went to meet his teacher, she kind of looked at me and said, what is his roll number? She didn't even know my son's name. And I said, what is this? Yeah, so many of our children go through life without even a name,
Right.
without even a story and identity. Well, so two things happened at that day. I remember reacting as a mother and saying, how is this possible? And what is this nonsense? But I think I responded as a designer. And I think that's really the distinction. I have seen too many of us blame, complain, and say, "Ye to hota hi rehta hai. What can one person do? This is the government's job." And we justify the lack of action by virtue of our helplessness. And we say, "Ye to hota hai." I mean, I turned out all right. No, my son will turn out all right. So I think I did have that frame, and I responded as a designer thinking, yeah, there has to be a better way. And so I keep saying, you are who you've been waiting for. Nobody else is going to come and change your life. So I believe that day when I took him out of school and I called up Geet, my husband, I said, Geetu, I'm taking him out of school. I'm starting. By then he knew I was a little mad. So he said, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. But I think there has to be a better way. And
that would have been the starting point of DFC then, right? In some sense. And so if I may ask you two things. One, what were your major design principles for DFC, for Design for Change? What were the building blocks? And also from a social entrepreneurship perspective, what do you think? What do you think is the importance of a personal experience for you to become a social entrepreneur?
Well,
because in your case, it was really this personal experience which made you start this, right?
Well, the personal experience gives you stamina. It's as simple as that. If it is not personal, you're not going to wake up every day. Otherwise, you'll always, when it's not personal, you have end goals, you have exit plans. Well, if it's personal, there are no exit plans. This is it, boss. Unfortunately, there are too many startups who already start with an exit plan. I will make this money, I will get venture capitalists, I am exiting. So, and therefore, I feel there's an idea diarrhea in the world. We've got too many ideas. And I think that that's the greatest issue that we deal with. So I believe if it's not personal, and if it doesn't wake you up every single day, you are going to lose the stamina to stay with it long enough to make some measure of dents and space and shift in that space that you've taken. So I think it must be personal, but don't take it personally. There's a big difference there. Yes. It must be personal, but don't take it personally. It's not about you. It's not a self-congratulatory idea. It's not an idea of saying, I'm a social entrepreneur and all of that stuff. So none of that. So I feel it must have a deeply, like I remember my friend Anshu of Goonj who started, he said, Kida hona chahiye. There should be a Kida in your mind. And all of us should find that Kida who makes us slightly uncomfortable every single day. Not too much, because then you get weary with the fatigue of it. But just enough to wake you up every morning to say, I have to make that road a little better. So that's why it needs to be a personal story. Other than that, like when you said Design for Change was born out of Riverside School, right? Riverside School first came. And the idea of listening and designing, because I didn't come from education. So I had to learn everything ground up. And the greatest teachers were my children. I started, in fact, when my oldest grade was just 6-year-olds. And that's the beauty of what I realized. 6-year-olds are whole people. They are complete people. They might be tiny, but they're complete people. And so those filters about gender, age, and demographics completely, got removed. So I think that was the power of understanding the I can spirit when you listen to children. That eventually allowed me to work the design process and demystified it, because till then design thinking was always thought of to be in the ideas of the world or the NIDs of the world. And here our children are natural design thinkers, right? They need to start with empathy, and then they have an adult who listens. I think too much of education about is instructing people and directing them and telling them what to do or what to change. The moment you listen and you give that trust in that space, magic happens. I keep saying this, in the first 2 years of our child's life on the planet, they say, look at me, mama. I can from crawling to sitting to standing to laughing to thinking in the first 2 years, Ashish. Right. They make the most remarkable things. And then what do? We send them to school. And then for the next 15 years, we tell them, keep quiet, listen to me. And that is where the irony is. So I think Design for Change was born out of the idea that every child can. They have the potential to have that self-belief. And then subsequently, Design for Change was launched in 2009. And then today we're in 70 countries. Yeah, so
Right.
those are,
Right.
yeah.
So, Geet had come over home in Gurgaon about 5-6 years back. And he was, I think you were at Harvard also, right? For some class, course, or so. He mentioned one thing to me, which has stuck with me. And he said, look, Kiran always says that excellence is scale. Right. So how have you used this notion of excellence at scale? Is scale, because obviously you have scaled this up big time. So how have you done this?
Well, there are two notions. One is excellence as scale, and one is numbers as scale. We often think of scale as numbers. We think, "Arey, jitna bhi bada ho sake, then that's the whole purpose, right?" But excellence, I mean, I'm sure Plaksha will turn out to be that idea of excellence, changing the narrative of the conversation in your domain. That's scale. The very fact that Riverside was able to influence the idea of what schooling could look like and feel like and sound like. I mean, that's also scale. Suddenly, there were more schools that were mimicking what we were doing, and there were more people wanting to kind of understand how we did what we did. And suddenly, because you went very deep and you really focused on this on one vertical, you're able to change the narrative in that space. And I think that's scale. I mean, look at the one Harvard and the one Stanford, etc. Like Ashoka is now creating that space. Eventually, it will offer the opportunity that it's possible to many more people who want to start, say, liberal arts colleges. So what you do is you suddenly give the vision of it's possible. And you start making look, and I think sometimes excellence makes it look so simple. And that's the little dodgy part, right? Somebody said, I'm also Sachin Tendulkar. Everybody wants to become that. But the point that he offers you that it's possible, the point that excellence offers you that it's possible is really the idea of scale again. So try to do both is what I keep saying.
Right. So what has been the one big challenge that you can say that was the biggest thing in this journey, and linked to that, what was one of the biggest failures that you learned a lot from?
If you know anything about Geet Sethi, you realize that there is failure and success are very social construct. It has nothing to do with you. So I'm not a fan of failure. I don't think it's a language that either we must tell our children or think for ourselves. I think it's only about choices and responsibility. If you have an iterative sort of journey, right? The feedback mechanism is so useful to taking choices to refine whatever you do. In education, at least in school, we never give our children the opportunity to iterate, right? We give them a report card at the end of whatever and say, this is it. Either you've got the mark or not. And there is no conversation on iteration or refinement. So I think for me, coming from the design mindset, for me, it was always about choice. You either take a choice because you understand the user and change and iterate and prototype, and then it's not failure. It just is a choice you've taken, right? Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So it might sound flip, but I don't think it's failure. It is responsibility for the choices you take. And then you're able to then define the next step by saying, am I going to take better choices now? Because I'm able to either get the feedback at the right time, I'm able to listen to it, I get it from the right spaces. So all I've learned is to be very brutal with the prototyping process. I go to the best in the field. I ask them to be really kind of honest about the feedback mechanism, and I iterate very quickly. I have a huge bias to prototyping. I do that really quick, and then I'm able to then do the adjustment into the iteration. So failure. So it's not about failure anymore, right? It's just an iterative journey. You just get better on that iteration. Challenges, yes. Yes. I mean, yes. I mean, why not? I've had epic challenges. I mean, you name it and I've had them all. But I think what I realized that to be able to overcome that, you really need to have your own lighthouses and role models. For me, I'm a huge I'm deeply inspired by Gandhiji, and I have his cutouts all over the school. And it allows me to pause and look at my own challenges and perspective and say, "Kya yaar? Only 6 months and I'm getting tired. What? Yeah, he did it for 40 years. Yeah, so it gives you perspective." And then the three things I really take from him is a sense of humor. You got to have it in this journey that you're in. That's why I said it's not about you. Retain your sense of humor. Be completely shameless. Again, it's not about you. So no ego, shigo, and all of this. And then have the stamina. It has to be a personal pursuit. So I think if I've got those three S's guiding me, I'm totally shameless when my kids are concerned. If it's kids, I'm not going to be diplomatic, polite, or subtle about it. I'm going to go out there and be a champion. I have to retain the sense of humor because this is a marathon race. It's a long story. It just continues. And right. The stamina. So yeah, challenges aate rehte hain. What's the point?
No, wonderful. So I guess one of the things which constantly inspires a social entrepreneur, and if I may call you that, although you might not necessarily want to be called that, is purpose, right? And there is obviously a higher purpose, which is which goes beyond yourself as an individual, right? So first question is, how important is that purpose? And second, again, from a practical point of view, how do you balance Saraswati and Lakshmi, if you understand what I'm saying, right? Because it's a double bottom line impact story of a social entrepreneur. But, you are imparting education, but at the same time, you need capital to scale. So what do you do?
I'll answer the purpose one part, first. Again, like I said, that came to me. I don't think I went seeking it. Unbeknownst to me, it was offered to me when I became a mother. And I think all my steps and missteps till then were preparing me for that final goal. Because I had started my design studio. I was designing restaurants and stuff, and I was having a blast. I had no desire to change the world. Okay, I was having too much fun. And then I think when I became a mother, I believe all the skill sets I was accruing till then got me ready for whatever this would be. And then, of course, that has been my purpose. So, again, I think you have to be worthy of a purpose. I don't think purpose comes to everybody. You really have to be worthy of it because it's the pain you're willing to sustain, not the joyful times. Because everybody thinks, oh, it's a fun thing. It isn't, right? So I think be open, understand that you're not aggressively going and saying, I want purpose. It will come. You will find that you are basically preparing yourself for that moment when it'll come to you. So that's the purpose bit. In this Lakshmi Saraswati bit, I think I was very, very lucky. And I think I keep saying luck is a massive, an arrangement of circumstances that I had, which didn't put the pressure of being financially viable when I started my school as the overriding principle to start. I think very often your financial viability puts in so much pressure that you change direction very quickly. Suddenly it's no longer purpose, it is the monies, it is the numbers, it is the impact. So I was very lucky. I started in my home. I started small. I had the luxury of time. I had the luxury of numbers. And I took it a year at a time. So and at no point I broke even actually in my 7th year. It took 7 years to kind of break even and all of those. So I think I spent so much time creating the program with my team that today, I believe you have to have weight in what you do. It can't be a superficial idea. It's going to break anyway, right? So again, I think I was very lucky to be gifted those 7, 8, 10 years to really get deep and get my hands dirty. I was teaching full time. I still teach in the school. I love what I do. I had such a great time. I had to learn everything ground up. I had no time to get tired or being fatigued, I still, 20 years ago, I started the school, Ashish. I still like going to school. Can you imagine? So.
Shahrukh Khan said, right? Kisi cheez ko shiddat se mango to puri kainat kam aayegi, right? So that's exactly what happened. So we have a question from the audience. This is a question from Shri. How has this pandemic affected, your school maybe, but also broadly DFC? What has been the impact?
Well, I think it has possibly been hugely, like I said, challenging and fantastically gratifying, both. In one way, because we understood that the value of children, voice, and well-being have now become the forefront conversation in education. Till now, it was incidental. I mean, if they happen to get the marks, well, great. Everything else was a bonus. Here, it's flipped it, and I think the focus going forward would mean very clearly that relationships and children matter the most. I think it's kind of changed the direction for all further innovations. So I think that's been super, and I think Design for Change is just ridden the wave. A lot of my partners across the world went digital. We had some super ways that we were able to give multiple more ways in which Design for Change could reach a child. In terms of the school, I think we were already doing a lot of, I would say, flipped, and whatever this now has become the big deal. But I think it just gave us the opportunity to to be very brave, to work together as a team, and to kind of give. I think it asked us if we could still bring the value proposition online. Till now, Riverside was such an immersive, experiential school, and you needed to be here, and you needed to hug each other, you needed to do all of that, right? And now suddenly you have none of those, and you have to you're just on Zoom. How do you bring those same ideas of people and empathy online? So I think it really pushed us to put that in, and yeah, so I think we did it well. I think it was great.
So, Kiran, so maybe to convert this crisis into an opportunity, what are the next one or two big things you are thinking of as far as DFC is concerned? And I'm sure this is a discontinuity, right? This is a step function change which one could adopt also if one gets it right. So is there one or two things that you will do differently going forward because of COVID?
I think it's given us a lot more clarity of what we don't need to teach in person. I think that's come out really, really well. I think it'll be foolish to teach what children can learn by themselves. All right, so suddenly you're gifted time. And I think that time is going to be really reimagined. You're gifted, I would say, the fluidity, the idea that you have time as a variable. And for me, that is really coming out as a massive opportunity to reimagine what will we do with time. So time has become a real ingredient to play with. And I think the piece that I am really curious to know, and is not going forward, but is going backwards, to say, what memories will our children have of this year? What will 2020 be for our children? So actually, it's in two ways. So today, my team is kind of working on what will our children look back to 2020 as? Would it be just, I was scared, I was at home, or would they be looking at 2020 and saying, our teachers did this, and we learned that, and we got this. So I think it's more about memories that we can gift our children this year, and going forward, how will we play with time? So I think these are the two that we will look at.
Right. So, Kiran, we have about 5 minutes left in this session, and I think it'll be really a pity if we did not sort of do a deeper dive into your experience as a woman, getting into entrepreneurship, getting into leadership, and really being a role model for future generations of women leaders. And at Plaksha, it is our stated strategy, and it is a stated intent that we would like to get in an equal number of women into our university, into creating the future women leaders for technology, for entrepreneurship, and what have you. So the first question which somebody has asked, Shivangi has asked, is how do you balance family and work?
Well, you have to declutter. I think the problem with most of us is we want to do, we clutter our time, whichever, we all are gifted 24 hours. I don't know whether somebody else has more than that. In those 24 hours, you have to kind of declutter. And what I did many years ago, I had, I think, the unique luxury not to be worried about social norms and social traditions. I was brought up, and to answer your other question of gender, not to talk about gender. I can't remember being brought up with my mother or father telling me a girl and a boy thing. We all got motorbikes when we were able to drive. We all did the same thing. So gender never factored into my understanding of who I was. Competency did. I had to be damn competent, whatever I did. It didn't matter whether it was there. So I think in some way that filter or mind about gender didn't come much as my way forward. Having said that, for balancing, I just decluttered. I don't go to marriages. I don't go this. I've just removed all of those clutters that come in the way of my work. And if family is which now are the two most important things, I don't clutter my time. I've seen too many people add, I have to go for the social function. I have to go out for this. I just choose not to. I don't socialize the way I think people expect us to socialize. So I just removed the clutter. I just decluttered. I made it extremely simple. And then I chose wisely the places I would go. So initially, of course, they said, yeah, she doesn't come anywhere. She's very arrogant. No, I'm not arrogant or anything. I just have 24 hours and I want to be able to choose that. So I've just removed all those social requirements.
I think it goes back to your comment around choices. It's an individual choice. I mean, you can have the victim mindset and you can say, look, this, that, or the other is responsible for my situation. But on the other hand, you can say, look, my life is my life. I can figure it out in whatever way I want to be. And especially in today's India, I mean, I think we are quite, progressive that way, I guess. So if there were 2 or 3 pieces of advice you wanted to give to the future women leaders, entrepreneurs, and especially from a technology point of view, what would those be?
So I would say your own self-beliefs is something that you have to be really self-aware of and understand about who you are and what you offer. So that will be one thing. And the second that not getting convinced, but I know so for a fact, is that you only have today. And I would strongly advocate that it is the today that you spend the time in investing so that tomorrow gets taken care of, right? So I would say 2 things: beliefs and time. Again, just today.
On behalf of Ashish, I just want to say a big thanks. It was just absolutely wonderful to hear your story. I mean, we did a poll with the audience yesterday on what kind of grand challenges they want to solve. And it was pretty inspiring to see that most of them selected education for all. And it's more and more inspiring to see how young people want to be a part of the education sector, make a difference, focus on things which matter. I think I'm sure like all our young audience members today took a lot back from you.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ashish.